Vanakkam, Namaskar, and welcome to my podcast, The People I Meet. My name is Kavya a.k.a. Vasant. I'm a radio jockey from Chennai, and on this episode of my podcast, The People I Meet, I'm going to be introducing to you someone who is so graceful. As her on-screen persona and her brand name reflects, she is someone who is truly transformed and literally captured a very special place in the hearts of the Chennai Makkal just through the way she dances. She's someone who owns the dance floor, someone who's a wonderful teacher, a fantastic friend, and someone who truly inspires a lot of people to come out of their shells and just dance for the joy of it. So it gives me immense pleasure in welcoming on to my podcast on this episode, Kavya, also known as the Black Swan. Hi Kavya, how are you doing?
Hey Shruti, I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. So first up, thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of my podcast, because I think I've had a very minimal interaction with you, if I may say so, and it's always been dance related. But I think
Yes.
you as a personality bring so much to the table. It's not just about the 5, 6, 7, 8. It's about a lot more than that, right? And today I want to showcase to my listeners that side of Kavya, right? Something that a lot of people don't really know. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to talk a lot of interesting things about Kavya, a.k.a. the Black Swan. So I know that swanography is something that you sort of created along with your sister, right? And you've had this very beautiful bond. You talk so much about how she has been a very big influence in your life, right? So take us through that journey of establishing this, because it's not easy. A lot of people go to the US in search of bigger and better opportunities, but you decided to do a complete switch and do a reverse migration. So tell me what prompted that decision and what was going on in your mind when you took that sort of leap of faith.
Sure. Those are both really great questions, Shruti, and actually not questions I get asked very often. And so we'll start with my sister, and we both are just 2 years apart. Funny enough, my mom put her in Bharatanatyam classes when she was about 6, and my mom was not planning on joining me yet. As soon as the teacher started teaching steps to my sister, I was sitting with my mom, waiting for us to go home. Apparently, I just jumped up and started dancing with my sister, and so our guru was just like, why don't you put both of them in, because clearly your younger one also wants to dance. And so since that age, we have been dancing together.
Wow.
For a very, very, very long time. And so from Bharatanatyam, we both did, jazz and modern dance in high school. So we both studied that for a few years. And then in college, we both together, along with some other very close friends, we started our college dance team. And the funny thing is that, in Chennai, not limited to just Chennai, but also in India, there is a huge competition scene as well. Right. But funny enough, it's mostly hip-hop oriented, at least from my perspective as to what I've seen. But the funny thing is, back in the US, we have an entire Indian dance competition network.
Right.
Because it's pretty insane. We have not only just... We have Filmi fusion competitions, but there's also Ras Garba competitions. There's Bhangra competitions. There's classical competitions. And so that is an entire scene back in the US. And as our university, I started my university, we realized that our specific college did not have a competing team to go to these, Indian competitions. And we had a pretty fair amount of Indians where I grew up, which was Arizona. And so, seeing California, seeing East Coast schools, we're like, you know what, this is not happening. We need to get in on this. And so we started that team, and the way it works is that you choose a story or some kind of theme for your competition year, and then you travel with that same theme from competition to competition.
All right.
And for the first couple of years, we were figuring it out. We did fairly well, but we were not able to go to the final championship. But my final year of being on the team, as well as my sisters, we adapted the Black Swan storyline.
Right.
And this is not something that very, very many people know. honestly. They'll probably hear it for the first time on your podcast.
Awesome.
So people think that I just got the name Black Swan because I like the movie, but it's a little bit deeper than that. It's actually because that final year of our college routine, we both played the respective swan. So I played the Black Swan and she played the White Swan. We did this like filmy fusion. Most of the songs were Indian, so we just adapted the storyline and we made it so that it was a Black Swan Bollywood fusion story. And so we did very well that year. We went to championships and then we got second place there. That did a couple of things for us. Like, one is it put Arizona on the map. People didn't even know that Indians lived in Arizona. The second is that people didn't really know me as Kavya and they didn't really know my sister as Neha. But, if a teammate came up and they're like, no, she played the Black Swan and she played the White Swan, people would be like, oh my God, no way. You're the Black Swan? What? Oh, we love that routine. And so that name just kind of became associated with us. Mm-hmm. And so that was very special because obviously it was with my sister. It was a year that we actually put Arizona on a national, legit map. The symbol, there's actually a book also called Black Swan Theory by N. Taleb, and he describes a Black Swan event as something that's unpredicted but impactful.
Wow.
And I feel like that's exactly what we did that year. And I love that that's what the symbol stands for. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I carry with me all the time. Whatever you do or whatever you set out to do, let it be something that challenges people or pushes people in an unexpected way and really try to create that impact. So I would say that is where the name came from and a little bit about my sister as well. So.
That's just truly, truly powerful because like you said, I'm so glad that people are hearing it for the first time on my podcast because I think a lot of us, especially like I said, right, with the world of social media, we constantly sort of associate somebody with a brand or the persona that they bring to their particular handle. And I've always, even on my phone, your number is still Black Swan. It took me a while, to, sort of switch and say, hey, Kav, this is what it is, and, change your number and all of those things. But like you said, it's just an amazing feeling for a performer to sort of just be associated with that title because it sort of moved the audience, right? It sort of made them remember the two of you as such powerful dancers. And the anecdote that you said about, the book that is called that and the symbol that is a representative of the Black Swan, I think that is truly powerful as well. And that's what you're doing through your dancing today. You are pushing a lot of people to come out of their boundaries, to come out of those boxes and do amazing things. So kudos to you on that. And yes, getting back to the second question that I had asked you, what was going on in your mind? Because as much as, like I said, right, a lot of people do the reverse. They look for greener pastures in the land of America. But how did you decide? How did you sort of feel about moving back to India? What was going on in your mind?
I feel like moving back, I actually didn't think too much about it. So how I am as a person is something will come up and I'll just be like, you know what, that's what I'm doing. It's not something I do heavy research on. It's just something that this feels right. And this is something that my intuition's telling me to go for. So that's what happened with college. I only applied to one college. And then once I graduated from college, I only applied for one job. And after that one job, I only applied for one thing that led me to India. So the thing that I actually applied for was, I was actually a biochemistry major with a Spanish minor, which I'm doing nothing with any of that.
Right.
So a whole nother podcast needs to be there for what is formal education really for. But that's for another time. So after that, I realized I didn't want to do medicine or research. So the only thing I felt like I could do with the science degree was teach, and I love teaching. So I applied to something called Teach for America, which a lot of people probably have heard of Teach for India. So I applied for that, and then I ended up teaching first grade in Chicago. Mm-hmm. So I was a full-time teacher in a classroom teaching kids, which I loved. So then I got my master's while I was teaching in Chicago, and then once my 2-year fellowship was done, I was wondering, what to do next. I can always go back to teaching, and honestly, that would make me equally as happy as choreography. But I felt like that was a time to explore. Like I was still only 23, 24 at the time. So someone was just like, hey, you did Teach for America. Have you heard of Teach for India? And they kind of pushed me towards that. So I contacted them, I applied, and then they accepted me as a manager position in Bombay. So I first moved to India, like family, friends, everyone there, to just move by myself and coach teachers how to teach children. And the reason I chose to do that in India versus the US is because when you compare, like, I love choreography, I love dance, but I also feel like social causes are something that's very near and dear to me as well. And when I can marry both of them together, that's when I feel like the most accomplished. So when you think of low income US versus India, you cannot even compare. So I felt like if I was going to do this work, I feel I could offer so much more in India than I could back in the US. Right. So that's like one of the main reasons I came. And also, like, when you're born and brought up in the US, like people always in India, like they keep saying, oh my God, my friends or my cousins or my family from America are so much more Indian than we are here. That's like a very common thing that's heard. The opposite's true as well. Okay. But a fair amount of us like really work hard to try and stay alive and stay connected to our culture, etc. And so I feel like, it's great to do that. Like, my mom put us in Bharatanatyam, Veena classes. We went for like the temple every Sunday. Like all of those things were very much there. But I feel living in the actual country is way more different, and you're going to understand so much more about your culture and your heritage than just like learning about it from afar. So I felt like moving here was a key thing. I feel like I always knew I was going to do this somehow in the back of my mind. I remember we would visit every summer to see family. And I remember one summer I just told my mom, like, I want to learn how to read Tamil. And like, my mom was like, why? I was like, I don't know. I just do. So like, I can actually read Tamil now from that time I was a kid. Like, not that I used it at all in the US, but like, I feel like a part of me knew somehow that I was going to come back, Right. And so I think that was like, that was my main motivation, just like the whole connecting with like, who you really are, learning more about your culture, like addressing social issues here versus the US. And then like, to be very, very honest, like in the back of my mind, maybe like there was that voice being like dance choreography. Right. But that was not my focus. That was not my main focus at all when I moved here. I actually didn't start anything with dance until 3 years after I moved to India. So.
Wow. I mean, that's something that I would have never guessed, probably. If you ever write a book or maybe like, have this, this I Say It All, Kavya, reveals mysteries of her life, something like that. Truly, like that's something that I would never have sort of made a connect with, right? Because like I said, social media truly portrays a very different image of us, if I may say so. And we always have these, as humans, we have this tendency to sort of not judge or label, but we sort of think that what we see is what we get, right? So sometimes I just think we always think of Kavya as a dancer, full-time choreographer, flitting in from rehearsal to rehearsal and just thinking of what the next big thing is. All right, so that's interesting. It's nice to know that you moved with this purpose. So you were talking quite a lot about, feeling connected to your culture and being associated with India in so many different ways back in the US itself, right? So how Indian is Kavya? How American is Kavya?
Oh man, I don't even know how to answer that. I'll just give you, I'm at loss. It's a good, interesting question. So I'm just going to give you a story, okay? So as kids, we would visit India, all right? We would be listening to like, the latest album that came out at that time. I think it was like Mindale or something, or like some movie, or I think maybe a J.M. Ravi movie or something. So we were like totally psyched with this like soundtrack and whatever. And like when we came here, like we would get so excited when we hear these songs on the radio and like all of that. So then my mom introduces us to her childhood friends' kids. So obviously these are kids that grew up here. And she's like, hang out with them and whatever. And we get into their car, and me and my sister are like, oh my God, the newest like Minale or like whatever JM Ravi movie. Oh my God, did you guys like hear about it? They're like, we don't listen to that. And then like they put on like Eminem or like something.
Right.
And we're just like, whoa, like we thought we were about to be really cool and we were not. So I don't really know how to answer this question. So I think maybe in interests, I would be very Indian. So I would say, obviously, the career that I've chosen, the fact that I've chosen to do dance and choreography in India versus the US, I think reflects the Indianness of me. However, I feel like there's a lot of like mindsets that are very, I guess, quote unquote American, full on believe in women empowerment. I don't think that women need to necessarily get married or have kids if they don't want to. People ask me what I miss the most about home, and I always say efficiency and customer service orientation. So I feel like those are very like American things that you're used to.
Right.
Yeah. But then at the same time, I love how India also kind of functions on relationships, right? So in the US, like you cannot, like you won't go to the grocery store and like make a connection with the guy selling coconut water, and then he'll somehow start delivering coconut water to your house every day, especially for you. Like that kind of stuff won't happen. Those are the kind of things that happen here, though, where like those kind of relationships will take you, so like very far.
There's a very personal connect. Yeah, there's a very personal connect here. Right. I totally understand that.
So, so I feel like that is very Indian of me. So I don't know. I can't really give a number, but I can give you examples of my Indian and Americanness. I know, but it's interesting. People get really confused actually with me here because they first look at me and they're like Indian, and then I open my mouth and they're like Malayali, Sri Lankan. Like, where are you from?
Right.
And then we'll talk about Indian things, and then I'll refer to some American things, and so I don't know. I feel like it's a pretty good mix of like who I am.
Honestly, the reason why I asked you this question is because, of late I've been having a lot of conversation with a lot of people, right? And we always sort of go back and talk about our roots and how we were raised with a certain value system and how today things are drastically changing, right? So the reason why I sort of asked you that question is to just understand how it has been for you as a person to sort of dabble with the best of both worlds. Like, for example, for me, I come from Chennai, right? I'm a true blue Chennai Vasi who was born and raised here and who'd probably, of course, even if I had a chance to move, I'd still want to call Chennai home, right? So that's just where I come from. But having been and lived abroad and having entire part of maybe most of your adulthood so far, having spent it there, I just sort of wanted to understand where that sort of side comes from, Kavya. It's just that. Yeah. So it's probably like a homo question.
It's a great question. I should make a list of Indian and American. And then it's fun because I feel like Indian kids here are not so Indian sometimes, So it's actually the question of what is being Indian? That's I feel an existential question that we need to ask. But I do think one thing you said was made me think of my parents, and my parents are pretty traditional for a lot of things. People were they assumed that I used to have American food all the time, but we would have Indian food every day. We'd go to the temple. My mom still only wears salwars and saris when she goes out even. I mean, even just the way we were brought up, it was very studies now. We did not date or have relationships and stuff. That stuff was not okay. So I feel my parents still kept up with a lot of those things back in the US. But I feel even more than a first generation American, it would be so interesting to interview a parent that has moved, because now my mom has spent more years abroad than she has in India now at this point in her life. Right. But she was born here. She's there. So I feel she has changed so much more than maybe even I have. So we definitely were brought up in a very traditional Indian way. And then my parents obviously they were also learning with us, about American traditions and ways of life and stuff. And I think they also had to kind of adapt, but pretty well rooted. Like I remember asking my parents if I could major in dance in college, and they were like, absolutely not.
I can imagine. See, sometimes you can take, the Indian out of India, but you can't sort of change them completely, right? I think that's sort of why these anecdotes are written, because people speak from experience. All right. So on that note, moving on, Kavya, and getting back to talking about your life here in India and all the things that you're doing with your dancing, right? Because you've adapted very beautifully to the whole online virtual classes during the pandemic. And even before that, you've had your stint with reality television. You've had your stint with choreographing a lot of intimate weddings and all of these things, right? So if you had to sort of say, what is the best quality you see in yourself when you adapt to these different situations? Because each one requires a different skill set, right? Like being on set for a reality show has a completely different, skill set altogether. Of course, you really need to be a good dancer. But apart from all of that, there's a lot of, background work that goes on, as opposed to teaching a class full time or, choreographing a Sangeet, because there are a lot more many people involved. So how do you sort of navigate through that? And what do you think is your strength when you go through these different facets?
I think for me that there's one common thing I feel amongst all of these, and it's just, like, I feel like it's just the love of learning. So I feel like in any situation, that is my focus. So it could either be me learning, or it could either be a student learning. It could be a couple and a family learning for like their wedding. But I feel like that's what was very different. So even like thinking a reality show setting, I feel like, honestly, yes, winning is great, but that was not my main goal. My main goal was to just go on the show and just grow and learn as much as I can as a dancer, because that was the first time I ever did a reality show, and like was, everyday rehearsals to the point where like you're learning and you're hurting yourself and like pushing yourself and all of that with like this like high pressure situation. But I was just like, you know what, you're doing this just to try and be the best dancer that you can be and learn. So in that sense, like, I think a lot of the times people get caught up in like, ooh, what place or how many views and TRP this and all of that. But I've that stuff really I just don't care. I mean, not that I don't care, but like, it's not important to me at all, at all. And I think that's the same thing with online classes. And like when I see students as well, like my main motivation is just to see them learn and like see them grow into the best dancer that they can be. And like, there's so many different things when someone learns, right? And even like the barriers of like what is holding them back. So for some people it just might be skill. For some people it might be like a mental block of like, I can't dance. And some people might be self-conscious with the way they look. And there's so many different barriers of learning as well. And like, I think for me as a teacher, the best thing is to just like identify those and like help them through that as well, in whatever way that I can. Like I've had students that come and like now they wear like a sexy top and like they're like hairs down and they just like are so much freer like with themselves, and just because they have that confidence now. And like just like so many small stories like this that make me like, you know what, it's just getting people to learn the best that they can and like just removing those mental barriers or block, I feel makes that it made even the transition to online not that difficult, because that philosophy didn't change.
Right.
There are a lot of teachers who use class to showcase themselves. Like that is their purpose of class. Like they want people to know how good they are, but I want people to know how good they are. you know, so that is my main focus. And so I think the common theme of any kind of situation that I'm in, whatever it may be, even for now I assist for movies for choreography, the actors and the actresses that I meet, the artists, whenever I go to teach them and we're on set, like my thing is that I need you to learn the best that you can and be able to perform so that you are looking and feeling the best that you can be. And I think that is like that it's just insane, like that connection that we get on set, because that's the goal. It's not like I want to buddy up and like get to know you and like, network and stuff. I'm just like, I just need you to feel really good and perform really well. And for that,
Right.
you just need to learn really well. I need to teach you really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if that's the goal, no matter whichever situation you are, I feel like that's the right mindset to have. Everything else is just, that'll follow if you just do your job really well, you know? So yeah, I think just the love of learning, whether it's me or my students or whoever, is the common theme.
I think that's beautiful because according to me, I've always believed this. A teacher is as good as, you know, I don't know if it's the right thing to say as good as his or her student, but a teacher continues to be the amazing person that he or she is when they decide that they never stop learning, right?
Yeah.
Because learning is something that you can never put an end to. It's not like you can ever say, hey, I'm done. I know everything that there is to know about any subject. And whether it's dance, whether it's the arts, whether it's music, anything for that matter, you never say, I have knowledge about everything. I'm done. I don't want to learn anymore. Yeah. So when you learn along with your student, I think, like you said, everything else sort of follows. And that's just a very beautiful place to be in. So thank you so much for that. I think that's a very beautiful takeaway for a lot of people who are tuned in right now, who just want to sort of understand what goes on, you know, in the psyche of a dancer. So getting back to talking about your art itself, Kavya. So you express very beautifully through your art form, you know, and as a dancer, somewhere I also sort of relate to that because I think you put in a lot of hard work into creating.
You also express very beautifully, Shruti. I don't know if you guys are, whoever's listening, I don't know if you've seen Shruti dance, but you need to go check that out right after this because she's amazing. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much. No, but the reason why I sort of wanted to ask this question is there are days, right? There are days when you don't feel your best. Right? Whether it's when you're choreographing or whether it's when you're having a class or whether you have a prior commitment, whether it's a rehearsal or a practice session. So what does Kavya, the dancer, do at that point to sort of come out from that? Because every artist goes through this. Every human being goes through this, right? So how do you handle that?
That's a great question. I feel like this quarantine time is a great example of that because the quarantine time has honestly, it's been up like highs and lows to a whole new level of like moments where you're just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, am I even headed on the right track anymore? Right. You know, all the plans that I had are canceled. And so definitely I've had those days. When I teach, even like, I will be feeling like that right until I turn the camera on and say like, welcome. But as soon as like I see the students, I feel like that goes away because like at that point, that purpose is so much bigger than just yourself. Like, you know, like you can make or break someone's day within the next hour and a half of your class. And I obviously hopefully always make someone's day when they take my class.
I guarantee
I can't let those, yeah, so sweet. I can't let those emotions affect that. So I think when it comes to class, that I'm able to put that aside. And usually after class, I will feel much better. I think I'm a human connection kind of person where like the quarantine time for that reason is much more difficult because you're not getting that constant connection with, especially your students. Yeah. So I think online class, at least after that, it's been great for that. When it comes to myself, like my personal rehearsals and everything, if my mental kind of strain or block is really, really bad, and if it's like my own personal practice or whatever, there will be some days where I just take a break. And I'm just gonna be very honest with that. Like I'm not Superwoman or anything. Again, like I know you mentioned, Shruti, and it's so true. Like social media is so deceiving that way. I definitely take a break if I need to. But if I do have a rehearsal with someone else, like if we both are collaborating for a video that we're going to post soon or something, again, push myself through that. I may tell them like, you know what, today's not the best of my day. Like, can we just either, you know, recap what we've done? If I'm having like kind of a creative choreographer block, maybe they can like teach me some things that day. So still try to use that time wisely, but I'm still very like honest and true to myself and the other person. Students are different. I try not to pull them into that. I'm not going to be like, hey guys, today's been like, you know, I realize that's like a downer class.
Right.
Like, that would be really sad. But when it comes to myself and like maybe another professional to professional like dancer, then I'll be a little bit more honest. But usually once you're productive for a little bit, that usually lifts your spirits. So.
I think I 100% agree with you on this, because there have been several days where, like you said, during this quarantine, where I felt like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I would have wasted that entire day. But the moment, like you said, right? And as being a student, when I switch on the camera and when I see your face and you're saying, hey, so this is what we're going to do. This is our routine. I'm going to be teaching you this. And the moment you automatically see, like, of course, I understand that you were not able to feed off the energy of your students, and definitely the high of being in a studio together is completely different. But still, you know, reflecting, keeping your purpose above yourself, like you rightly put it, I think is a very beautiful way that any teacher should sort of, you know, bring to the forefront. Because looking at you, we sort of learn that as well. And maybe I feel better because I'm somebody who puts all of my, whether it's my anger, whether it's my frustration, I think the dance floor has seen all of that. We've all done it. Whether it's tears, whether it's happiness, whether it's romance, we've all sort of, you know, put that out there on the dance floor, and we've always, you know, gotten extra love back in return through the art form. So I think that's a beautiful takeaway, Kavya. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And sort of winding up this conversation, I just have a couple of more things that I want to ask you. And this again stems from talking to Kavya the person and not Kavya the Black Swan. Okay, so something that people don't know about Kavya. One thing that people don't know or don't realize about Kavya when they sort of, you know, see her.
I am a huge procrastinator.
Wow, I did not see that one coming at all.
Sometimes to a point where it really, I'm at a point where I don't get fazed very much anymore.
Right.
But I can really stress out the people around me with how far I push things.
Okay.
To the last minute. If it's something to do with other people, I'm okay, although sometimes I can push it. But if it's stuff to do with myself, like if I have to, like in school, if I have to write an assignment, you know, if it's due at midnight, I will turn in at like 11:58. Like that is, you know, like to that level. So now you can just apply that to even work now.
Right.
I procrastinate, no one's business, which I am a night person. I can stay awake till 3-4 a.m., which is like work. But then the morning, it's not my time. Right. I shine mostly at night, which is why it's great that we're having this conversation now, because
right.
I feel like in the morning I would have been like, can I have 2 more minutes to think about this, you know? But I procrastinate. It's not great. It's obviously not a good quality. I am the opposite of my sister.
Right.
I'm just going to tell you guys a really funny story, because this is the best way I can describe, like, especially a contrast of me and my sister.
Uh-huh.
When I have exams Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in college, Sunday I'll be studying for Monday. Monday I'll be studying for Tuesday, and so on and so on. My sister will be studying next to me on Sunday, and I'll be like, oh, your test is tomorrow too? And she'll be like, oh no, I'm done studying for tomorrow's test. I'm studying for Wednesday's test. And I was like, what? I was like, how are you so planned to the point that I don't know, it's crazy. I will never forget that moment where I'm just like, you are so much more organized in life than me.
That's right. Yeah. It's okay. We don't always have to agree on things, or we don't have to be 2 peas in a pod, right? That's why you are the black swan and the white swan. Otherwise, life would be so difficult to have the 2 of you together. Imagine. Like, of course, both of you are really good.
I know, it's true. But I do wish she could have, given me some of that. Because sometimes it's crazy. I'm like, you really could have just done this earlier. You were on your ass, watching Netflix for 4 hours. You could have easily finished this at that time. You know?
Right.
So,
But I would have never imagined that this is the answer that Kavya is going to give me when, I mean, like a procrastinator is something that I never thought of you, okay? So I'm sure anybody who knows you, anybody who is listening to this is now sort of thinking, really? Kavya? Okay, all right. So the last question that I have for you today, Kavya, is what does art mean to you? I'm going to keep it very simple. Art, because I know you also play the veena, and I know that art has been a very fundamental part of your life. And not just dancing. I know obviously with dance comes the music, and since you already have a very strong background with veena as well, what does art mean to you?
I'm going to respond in terms of the perspective of dance, and then I'll come back to the veena. So for me, these two things are very different because I think they serve different purposes in my life. I feel art is a means to challenge, inspire, entertain. But I do feel like the first two are so much more important for me. I feel like as an artist, we have the power to really, I don't know if we can create change, but we can definitely spark it. And 100%. I think this is, and for me, this is like an example of this is, I mean, I love filmy songs. I love dancing, like our fun routines, you know, those are definitely there. And I feel artists gain much more popularity in that direction. But I really wish that like 1 out of 2 or 3 of those pieces would be about issues that like affect our society. And I think an example of this is when Section 377 was passed 2 years ago. And it was in September, it was around my birthday. This is an issue that's really close for me because I have a lot of LGBTQ friends. And so we actually created a piece around this issue. That was, I think there was like this one Facebook site or whatever who asked if they could share that video on their page, which they did. And some of the responses were so interesting, and some of the discussions that were sparked from that one video were like, I was shocked. Like, I was shocked at some of the mindsets. I was very proud at some of the responses to those mindsets. For me, if we can use art to like challenge and inspire, I think that is what art is for me when it comes to dance and performance. When it comes to veena, honestly, like that for me is happiness. Like, that sounds weird. I have like a very love-hate relationship with dance, okay? With dance, it's like, I love it, but sometimes I hate it because it like makes me feel like shit. And then sometimes it makes me feel like on top of the world. But with veena, it's like, it's just, I don't really care how well I'm playing right now, but like, I'm just so happy playing this instrument. Like, it's really just for me. And which is why I don't perform veena, like on stages and stuff. Because like, I need to practice way more before that happens. But second is because I really don't want to, because that's just like for my own personal joy. So that is what art means to me in very 2 different ways. And so, yeah, I think one is obviously more career and life, and then one is just like, you know, my own personal kind of hobby, I would say. So
I think that's perfect.
Sorry, very long answer for your question.
No, I think, see, this is the reason why I have these conversations, right? Because like you rightly said, anything that we do as an artist, right? I believe very truly that every artist comes with a responsibility to sort of spark that change that you were talking about, to at least ignite a conversation. It doesn't have to be thought-provoking. It doesn't have to be radical. It doesn't have to be world-changing at the moment, because Rome wasn't built in a day. But just being that spark, just starting off that conversation and just being a sort of, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel, I think that is important. Because somewhere you are inspiring somebody else to open up and talk about their conversation, and sort of that puts things, it's sort of like a snowball, right? the snowball effect keeps happening when more people start talking about it. And I think as artists, a lot of people take that responsibility very seriously. And I think that is sort of the reason why we progressed to where we are today. And I think there's, of course, a lot more work that needs to get done. There's a lot more that we need to do as a community. But I think we're slowly and steadily progressing towards that. And I think a lot of artists,
I mean, like, I think building on what you're saying, even, it's like, when we think of where a lot of our conversations come from, it might be from that movie that we watched, from that music video that we saw. Like, I feel art is one of those main propellers of just like where the conversations come from.
Right.
And if it's just like fun and filmy and silly all the time, I don't feel like we're using it to the full potential that we can. Those things are really important. I'm not saying that we should not enjoy through dance and just have fun. That's really important. But I do feel like it's also like a responsibility, like especially if this is your full-time profession, to use it to like spark that. Yeah. I mean, there was actually this one video that we did. I just remember this. It was a class. It was to a song called Strip, and it was all about just like loving our body and like not body shaming, and you know, just being people of all different sizes, colors, etc. And just that's great, that's fine. And to start that video, like I remember we put like a piece of tape on our mouth and had a word that was used, that people have used to describe us. So obviously there was like dark, and there was like slut, and there was like short, midget, or whatever, and like etc. And these are like very hurtful words that we've used, and the whole point of this song was to like remove it and rip it off and like come out of that. And I remember there was this one girl who put it on her mouth, and she was larger than like the rest of us. So she had fat on her mouth, and she put it, and then she like looked in the mirror, and then she just like started crying. And it was just like right before we were going to shoot, and then like everybody was just like crying with her, and then we're all just like crying together. And then like once we finally ripped it off and like took it out, you know, like it was just this very like powerful experience. And I don't know, I just feel like things like that, I don't know where else you'll be able to get.
Art moves us. That's the whole purpose of art, right? Art in any which form, whether it's performance, whether it's visual, art in itself is an experience. And I think as humans, we are very lucky, we're very blessed to be able to transcend and sort of understand art in its purest form, or even in its not so pure form, right? And I think to be able to break free of those shackles is something where we truly feel empowered. As much as we talk about it, I think each one of us is fighting our own battles. And if we're able to come out of it stronger, and if art is enabling us to sort of break free, I think we should all just be using art for the way it's meant to be, right? And we don't have to box it. We don't have to say, we don't have to label it. We don't have to sort of say, this is the right or this is the wrong. We just have to go with the flow and embrace life as it is, right?
Absolutely.
And I think with that, I sort of want to say thank you once again, Kavya, because we've had some really, really, really insightful thoughts, and this conversation truly has been very liberating for me. And I hope the listeners who've tuned in today have also felt the sort of power and the communication, right? Art communicates to each of us in very different forms, right? And I hope that they've also been able to feel the power of communication through art, through this conversation that we've had. And here's wishing you all the very best with everything that you do. You're such a talented teacher. You're a wonderful choreographer. You're a wonderful human being. Today I've gotten to know you a little better outside of the realm of dance, and I truly wish and pray that you have all of the success that is, destined to follow you. And just keep inspiring and keep evolving, and just stay true to the Black Swan that you are. Thank you.
So sweet, Shruti. Thank you. And all of that right back at you. You are all of that as well. And it's been so wonderful. I feel a conversation honestly reflects the quality of the questions asked. And I just feel like your questions were so spot on and like actually made me really think and look deep. So thank you for that. That was really wonderful.
Thank you. And on that note, listeners, I will meet you on yet another episode of my podcast, The People I Meet. Today, my guest was Kavya, also known as the Black Swan. You can check her out on all her social media handles. She is known as the Black Swan. So like I said, with that, we come to the end of today's episode, and I will be meeting you with yet another interesting story, with yet another interesting personality on yet another episode of the podcast series, The People I Meet. This is me, Shruti Vijay Kumar Vasant, a radio jockey from Chennai, signing off. And until I meet you the next time, take good care of yourself and stay safe.